Okay, so today we're going to use our unit circle to solve various trig functions. So if I look at example 1, I'm given sine of x plus the square root of 2 equals negative sine of x, and I need to solve that for x. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is I need to get my signs together. So in order to move this sine of x, since it's positive, I'm going to subtract sine of x from both sides. Okay, so if I do that, then I'm left with positive square root of 2 equals negative 2 sine of x. Okay, so I still need to get the sine of x by itself so I can solve for x. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. And I get sine of x equals square root of 2 over negative 2. Okay, which is the same thing as negative square root of 2 over 2. It doesn't really matter where you put the negative. So we're going to be looking for symbols that match these on our unit circle for our sine. Remember, sine is your y value. So if I look at my unit circle, and I'm looking at my y values, where do I find negative square root of 2 over 2?
Under
Okay. 7 pi over 4. Carrie, where else do I find it? 5 pi over 4. Very good. So what that tells me then is that x is equal to 7 pi over 4 or 5 pi over 4. That either one would work, because you can find that value on your unit circle at either of those spots. Okay, so any questions on 1a? Okay. If I look at 1b, I have sine of x minus the square root of 2 equals negative sine of x. So very similar to the first one, except instead of adding square root of 2, we're subtracting square root of 2. So I'm going to start to solve that in the same way. In order to get my sine of x's together, I need to move this sine of x. To move it, since it's positive, I need to subtract it. So I'm going to subtract sine of x from both sides. By doing that, then I get negative square root of 2 equals negative 2 sine of x. I still want to get my sine of x by itself, so I divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. Then my negatives cancel, and I end up with square root of 2 over 2 is equal to sine of x. So if that's the case, then this is the value that I'm looking for in my unit circle for my y value. So for my y value, where do I find square root of 2 over 2? Okay, so pi over 4 and 3 pi over 4. So my x values are either going to be pi over 4 or 3 pi over 4. Okay. If I look at example 2a, I'm given 3 tangent squared of x minus 1 equals 0. So I need to get the tangent of x by itself so that I can solve for x. First thing I need to get rid of then is this minus 1. So in order to get rid of minus 1, I add 1. So 3 tangent squared of x equals 1. So how do I get rid of this 3? Divide, so I'll divide by 3, divide by 3. So tangent squared of x equals 1 over 3. Okay, and how do I get rid of a squared? Square root. So tangent of x equals square root of 1 is 1, square root of 3 is just square root of 3. So I get tangent of x equals 1 over the square root of 3. And I don't have tangent values on my unit circle, but I think most of you wrote them on. So if you wrote that on, where do we find 1 over the square root of 3 on our unit circle? And pi over 6, and pi over 6, very good. So I know that x could either be 7 pi over 6 or pi over 6. You'll have to write on your tangent values later because they're not on there. Like later, like they're on the pig back there on the wall. So you'll copy off of the pig later. Okay. If I look at 4 sine squared of x minus 3 equals 0, then first thing I need to do is I need to get rid of this minus 3. So I'm going to add 3. So 4 sine squared of x equals 3. Okay, then to get rid of this 4, I'm going to divide by 4. So sine squared of x equals 3 over 4. The last thing that we need to get rid of is this squared, which we said we get rid of by square rooting everything. So if I square root everything, square root of 3 is just the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2, so I get square root of 3 over 2. So I need to look for sign values where I get square root of 3 over 2. So I'm looking. So square root of 3 over 2. So where do I find my x values? Or sorry, my y values that are square root of 3 over 2? Anyways, where do I find that? Very good. Pi over 3 and 2 pi over 3. So that's not what I wanted. So I know that x is pi over 3 or 2 pi over 3. Okay, we'll just do 2 more, then we'll get started. So if I'm given cotangent of x times cosine squared of x equals 2 cotangent of x, and I need to solve that for x. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything to one side of the equation. So I'm going to move this 2 cotangent of x to the other side of the equation by subtracting it. It's easiest to solve an equation that you don't know what you're doing with if you have it set equal to 0. Okay, which is why I did that, so that I could get it equal to 0. So on the other side, I have cotangent of x, cosine squared of x, minus 2 cotangent of x. Okay, so that doesn't look like it's much simpler. But then I also notice that I have a cotangent and a cotangent in each of my terms, so I'm going to factor out a cotangent. So if I factor out a cotangent of x, Then in my first term, I'm left with just cosine squared of x. And in my second term, I'm left with 2. So cosine squared of x minus 2 equals 0. Now we know by our product of zeros that either cotangent of x equals 0 or cosine squared of x minus 2 equals 0, which are much simpler equations than the one we started out with, except there's 2 of them. Okay, so cotangent is the inverse of tangent. So where is tangent equal to 0? Because that's where cotangent will also be equal to 0. Okay, so pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So I know those are my cotangents. Then if I want to solve this other equation for cosine, I'm going to get rid of a minus 2, I add 2. So I get cosine squared of x equals 2. Then if I take the square root of each side, I get cosine of x equals the square root of 2. And remember, cosine is your x values. So on our unit circle, where do we find an x value of square root of 2? Look at this unit circle, I'm just at my x values. Do we find a square root of 2 anywhere on our unit circle for our x values? Okay, so we don't find one. So then this x is no solutions. If it's not on your unit circle, then it's no solutions. Okay, so let's do one more like that. So sine of x squared equals 2 sine of x. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything to one side. So I'm going to move this 2 sine of x by subtracting 2 sine of x so that I have an equation equal to 0. Equations equal to 0 are the easiest to solve. So I get sine squared of x minus 2 sine of x. They both have signs in common. So I'm going to factor out a sign. So sine of x times sine of x minus 2 equals 0. Okay, and then from there, I know that sine of x is equal to 0, or sine of x minus 2 is equal to 0. Okay, so at what x values does my y equal 0 on my unit circle? Pi and 2 pi, okay. So I know that x is either pi or 2 pi. So then on this one, if I want to solve it, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I get sine of x is equal to 2. And so where is our y value equal to 2 on our unit circle? Nowhere, yeah, your y values only go up to 1 on your unit circle. Why it's called a unit circle. So then this is no solutions for this one. Okay. So we're going to work on this today and tomorrow, and you're going to quiz on Wednesday. We're going to do page 394, 11 through 38.